The first shout didn't just echo. It cracked the entire hallway open. "Security, remove him immediately." The words sliced through the glass-walled conference floor, stopping conversations mid-sentence and pulling every eye toward the commotion at the entrance of the executive meeting room. There he stood, a black man in a denim jacket, calm, centered, unshaken, while a manager jabbed a finger at his chest like she was swatting away a problem, not a person. A guard shifted beside him, ready to grab his arm, ready to prove he belonged anywhere but here. And not a single soul in that hallway knew the truth. The man they were trying to drag out was the only reason that $300 million deal was even happening today. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The moment the shout died, the room held its breath. In the middle of that polished hallway, Derrick Miles didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even blink. He simply looked at the manager, a woman whose certainty outpaced her judgment, and waited. "I said step back," she barked, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she advanced on him. "This area is restricted. Only authorized employees and high-level executives are allowed inside. Meetings like this aren't for wanderers." Wanderers. The word hung in the air like a stain. The guard stepped closer, fingers brushing Derrick's sleeve as if gearing up to drag him out by force. Several employees peeked over their monitors, whispering behind half-covered mouths. "Who let him in? He doesn't have a badge. Is he lost? He really thought he could walk into a $300 million meeting dressed like that?" From the left side of the hall, the intern, barely 23, clutching a laptop to her chest, froze as she overheard the name the manager was spitting out like it didn't matter. Derrick Miles. Something pinged inside her memory. She'd just reviewed the VIP list an hour earlier. The name was there. High priority. Confidential. Executives only. But before she could speak, the manager snapped. "Security. Do your job. Remove him now." The guard's hand locked onto Derrick's arm. Phones started rising. A few employees pretended not to watch, but their eyes betrayed them. Derrick stayed still, anchored, steady. He had seen this scene before. 20 years ago, when he was dismissed from a startup pitch competition without a second glance. 15 years ago, when a receptionist assumed he was a delivery driver despite his name being printed at the top of the agenda. 5 years ago, when another company lost a multi-million-dollar partnership because someone looked at him and saw outsider instead of owner. Today, history repeated itself, but the consequences would not. "Sir," the guard said, tightening his grip, "let's not make this harder." Derrick finally spoke, his voice low but sharp enough to cut the tension in half. "I told you. I'm here for the acquisition meeting." The manager scoffed. "And I told you. That's impossible. Do you even know what deal is happening upstairs? $300 million. Serious business. You don't just stroll in here claiming you're part of it." The intern's voice cracked as she finally forced herself to step forward. "Ma'am, I think..." "Quiet," the manager snapped, not even looking at her. "Don't defend people who clearly don't belong." A hush fell, so deep it felt like the hallway stopped breathing. The guard held Derrick's arm like he was detaining a threat, not touching the man holding the future of their company in his hands. Derrick exhaled once, slow, controlled, and raised his phone. "Alex," he said calmly, "initiate confirmation. Protocol 9. On the other end, a voice responded instantly. "Confirmed, sir. Sending executive-level verification to their board right now." And just like that, everything in that hallway began to shift, though none of them understood it yet. They thought they were removing a nobody. They were seconds away from discovering they had just tried to expel the man who controlled the entire deal they were desperate to win. The hallway remained frozen in the aftermath of Derrick's quiet command, but the manager recovered faster than anyone expected. She stepped forward, heels striking the marble sharply, as if noise alone could reclaim control. "Do not fall for whatever stunt he is pulling," she snapped, waving off the guard's momentary hesitation. "I want him out of this building before the executives arrive." The guard shifted uneasily, his grip loosening but not fully releasing. He looked at Derrick, then at the manager, caught between authority and instinct. The tension thickened like humidity before a storm. Several employees leaned out from their cubicles now, sensing something bigger than a simple misunderstanding. One whispered to another, "Why does he look so calm?" Another replied, "Because he knows something we do not." And he did. Derrick Miles had not raised his voice. He had not threatened anyone. He had not even taken a step. But the manager's hostility only deepened. "Sir, you are trespassing," she declared loudly, making sure everyone heard. "You do not belong in this area. You do not get to just walk into a major corporate acquisition meeting dressed like that and expect us to believe your story." Derrick's gaze lifted to meet hers, steady and unblinking. "I told you. I am here for the 10 o'clock review. That meeting is for critical personnel," she shot back. "Not guests, not contractors, and definitely not." She stopped herself, but the implication hung in the air, unmistakable. The intern flinched, her face tightening as she clutched her laptop to her chest. She felt a knot of dread forming in her stomach. She had seen the name. She had processed the guest list. She knew he belonged here. But fear of the manager's authority locked her throat shut. The guard finally found his voice. "Ma'am, maybe we should verify his information instead of escalating." "No verification," she snapped. "Do you hear me? None. I am not wasting company time on a walk-in claiming to be part of a $300 million deal." The words landed hard. Employees exchanged uncertain looks. Doubt began creeping in. Derrick's phone buzzed once in his hand. He lifted it slightly, enough so the manager saw the screen light up. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing now? Calling someone else to pretend you are important?" "No," Derrick said simply. "I am waiting." A ripple of confusion passed through the hallway. "Waiting for what?" The manager scoffed. "You can wait outside." She motioned again to the guard. "Remove him." This time, when the guard reached for Derrick's arm, Derrick turned his head, his voice low and composed. "I would advise you not to do that again." The guard froze, not because of a threat, but because something about Derrick's tone held a certainty that undercut the chaos. It was the tone of someone who had been underestimated far too many times, someone who no longer reacted, only observed. The intern finally gathered enough courage to step closer. Her voice trembled. "Ma'am, please. His name is on the list. I saw it this morning. Executive clearance. High-profile status." The manager spun around, her face tightening with irritation rather than concern. "You are mistaken. And even if his name is there, he clearly does not fit the profile of someone invited to a meeting like this." There it was. Not even subtle. Several employees stopped pretending to work. They stared openly now. The intern swallowed hard, eyes burning. She had been warned during orientation that the manager had a history of strong opinions, but she had never imagined it looked like this. Derrick watched her with a faint nod of gratitude. She had spoken when others did not. Still, he did not say a word. He did not need to. Another buzz echoed from his phone. The manager frowned. "What is that?" Derrick exhaled slowly. "Confirmation." At that exact moment, down the hallway, a conference room screen flickered to life on its own. Heads turned as a new window appeared, an incoming encrypted document packet bearing the red seal of an executive board authority. No one touched the controls. No one triggered it. But it opened anyway. "What is that?" an employee whispered. The intern's eyes widened. She recognized the seal instantly. Only top-level investors and company owners used that clearance. The manager stiffened, but doubled down. "This means nothing. Anyone with a laptop could fake." Her voice cracked as the screen displayed a full corporate authorization line. Protocol 9 verification, initiated by Derrick Miles. A hush fell so total that even the air seemed to stop. Someone gasped softly behind a cubicle wall. The guard's hand dropped from Derrick's arm. The intern pressed a palm to her forehead as realization swept over her. And the manager, who had spent the last 5 minutes barking orders like she ran the entire floor, finally lost color in her face. Derrick stepped forward, just one calm step. The guard instinctively stepped aside. The employees instinctively made room. The intern stood frozen, eyes wide. And Derrick said, quietly but unmistakably, "I told you I belonged here." The hallway did not breathe, because in that moment, they all began to suspect the truth. The man they tried to remove might not just belong in the meeting. He might be the most important person in it. The manager's breath hitched, but pride forced her chin upward even as the floor shifted under her feet. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, her voice suddenly smaller than it had been minutes earlier. A system glitch. A coincidence. Anyone could have triggered that display. Yet the tremor in her hands betrayed her. Every employee knew it. The guard knew it. The intern especially knew it, her eyes darting between Derrick and the glowing conference room screen as if watching a truth she had never been allowed to see. Derrick did not raise a hand, did not correct her, did not reclaim the space she had tried so aggressively to take from him. He simply existed in it with a calm that rattled the entire hallway. That was when another voice cut through the tension. "Hey, what is going on out here?" A senior analyst stepped out from one of the glass offices. He wore a pressed shirt, an expensive watch, and an expression of casual superiority, the kind that did not need volume to broadcast entitlement. He looked Derrick over, head to toe, then let out a half laugh. "You again? I saw him earlier near the lobby. He keeps wandering around like he is lost." The manager seized the moment. "Exactly. Thank you. He has been disrupting operations for nearly 10 minutes. We are trying to get him escorted out before the executives arrive." Derrick did not look away from her. "I have disrupted nothing," he said, his tone even, almost measured. "I walked into the building with a scheduled appointment. You chose to escalate." The analyst scoffed. "Appointment for what, exactly? Janitorial consultation? Delivery drop-off?" He looked to the others for approval. A few employees chuckled quietly, more out of discomfort than genuine humor. The manager folded her arms. "See? Nobody here believes you are part of this. Nobody." The intern's voice quivered. "I do," she said, barely above a whisper. The analyst rolled his eyes. "Please. You have been here 3 weeks. You do not know how any of this works." But she did. She knew enough to recognize patterns. She had seen how often the manager treated certain visitors, especially visitors who looked like Derrick, with suspicion first and questions never. She had been warned not to get involved in conflicts above her pay. Great. Yet here she was. She took a shaky step forward. His name was on the list. I saw it with my own eyes. Executive clearance. High priority status. The analyst frowned, irritation flickering behind his eyes. Why would someone with executive clearance show up dressed like that? Derrick smiled, a calm that cut deeper than anger. Because clothing does not determine credibility. The manager bristled. In a corporate environment, appearances matter. Only when you lack substance, he replied. A stunned silence swept over the hallway. Several employees exchanged shocked looks. The guard shifted awkwardly, unable to meet Derrick's gaze. The analyst opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to find a comeback that did not expose the prejudice lying just beneath his professionalism. And then the moment that mirrored so many chapters of Derrick's past unfolded. The manager took a step closer, lowering her voice as if the quiet would save her from accountability. "Listen to me," she hissed. "You need to leave before this becomes embarrassing." "For whom?" Derrick asked. She lifted her chin. "For you. You are already out of place. You do not belong in that meeting room, and you never will." Her words echoed the same tone he had heard at 23, when his bank account was frozen because the bank could not verify that someone like him should have that much money. At 26, when a loan officer told him he was high risk before reading a single page of his financials. At 31, when a firm subtly removed him from an advisory panel because he did not fit the company image. And now here, again. Another room. Another door. Another gatekeeper who mistook his quiet for permission to condescend. He inhaled once, slow enough for the entire hallway to feel the weight of it. "You keep using that word," he said. "Belong." She scoffed. "Because you do not." The hallway tensed. Phones rose again. Not recording yet, but ready. People knew instinctively that something irreversible was about to break. Derrick stepped forward, and the guard stepped aside without being asked. "If I do not belong," Derrick said quietly, "then why is the board verifying my identity?" The analyst frowned. "The board? Please. You do not even know who sits on the board." Derrick tilted his head slightly. "I do. I spoke to all 3 of them this morning." The manager let out an incredulous laugh, the kind only heard from someone running out of arguments. "You expect us to believe that you have spoken to people with that level of power?" Derrick's phone buzzed again. He raised it enough for them to see the screen illuminate with a new notification bearing the company's highest-level authorization tag. He did not need to open it. He did not need to prove anything. The notification alone said enough. He lowered the phone. I do not expect you to believe anything, he said. But you are about to. The hallway fell completely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Because everyone, from the intern to the analyst to the trembling manager, felt it. Something monumental was no longer approaching. It had already arrived, and they were standing in the middle of it. The manager's composure finally cracked, splintering under the weight of a truth she could no longer outrun. Her voice dropped, but the sharpness remained like a blade disguised in velvet. Enough of this, she said, forcing authority back into her tone even as her confidence slipped. I am calling upper security. This has gone far beyond a misunderstanding. She reached for the phone on the wall, her fingers trembling. Before she could dial, the conference room screen behind her flickered again. The company's internal system chimed loudly, a sound everyone on that floor recognized but rarely heard. Incoming authentication override, the automated voice announced. Every pair of eyes swung toward the glass wall. The analyst stiffened. The intern clapped a hand over her mouth. Even the guard took a step backward. The screen displayed a seal that almost no one in the room had ever seen in person. Board-level verification in progress, the system read. Then, under it, a line of text appeared in bold. Origin, Miles Capital. The manager's face drained completely. Miles. Capital, she repeated, her voice paper-thin. The analyst blinked quickly and took a step toward the screen as if distance might change what he was seeing. No way, he muttered. No way that is real. It was real. Everyone knew it. Miles Capital did not just invest. They reshaped companies. They saved some, dismantled others, and elevated very few. The $300 million deal was not just another acquisition. It was a lifeline for a company that had been quietly struggling for years. The manager lowered the phone slowly, her grip slackening as fear curled into her posture. You cannot possibly be saying, Derrick did not answer her. He did not need to. The system did it for him. A new alert illuminated the hallway. Identity confirmed, Derrick Miles. Position, lead negotiator and controlling authority for proposed acquisition. The silence that followed was not ordinary silence. It was a collapse, a complete unraveling of every assumption the manager, the analyst, and half the employees on that floor had made in the last 10 minutes. The intern's eyes brimmed with a mix of relief and vindication. The analyst swallowed hard, looking anywhere but at Derrick. The guard stared at the floor, cheeks flushed with regret. The manager's voice broke first. Why did you not say anything?" she whispered. Derrick finally looked at her. "I did," he said. "You just did not listen." She took a step back, her shoes skidding slightly against the polished floor. "But you do not look." She stopped herself, but the damage was already done. Derrick's eyes held hers, steady and unblinking. "No," he said. "I do not look like what you expected. That is the problem." The guard let out a quiet exhale, the kind that escapes only when someone realizes they have misjudged a situation beyond repair. The analyst tried to recover, clearing his throat. "Sir, if we had known." Derrick cut him off without raising his voice. "That is the point. You should not have to know who someone is to treat them with basic respect." His tone was not angry. It was worse. It was factual, unavoidable, undeniable. The manager's face tightened with panic, the reality of her actions sinking in like lead. "Please, I can explain," she stammered. "This is a high-security floor. I have protocols. I cannot just allow anyone to walk in during a major negotiation." "Protocol would have been to verify," Derrick said, taking a slow step forward. "Not to humiliate, not to accuse, not to assume." The intern's voice broke through timidly. He really was on the list. Derrick turned slightly, giving her a nod of acknowledgement. She straightened subtly, grateful her courage had not been misplaced. The manager looked around desperately, searching for an ally, but found none. Even the analyst avoided her gaze now. She was alone. "Sir," she tried again, "you have to understand. This is a very important day for us. I cannot afford mistakes." "Then you should not have made one," Derrick replied. His voice remained quiet, but the words hit with the force of a gavel. Her eyes glossed over with a panic she could no longer hide. "Please," she said, "I am asking you to give me a chance to fix this." Derrick looked at her, and for a long moment he said nothing. The employees held their breath. The guard did not move. The intern clutched her laptop tighter. Then Derrick spoke. "You did not give me a chance," he said. "You did not give me a question. You gave me a verdict. The manager's lips trembled. A hush fell again. And that was the moment several executives appeared at the far end of the hallway, moving quickly, alerted by the system override. They saw Derrick. They saw the screen. They saw the manager. And their expressions made one thing clear. This day was not going to end the way she hoped. The executives approached with urgent strides, their expressions sharpening as they took in the frozen hallway, the glowing conference room screen, and the cluster of employees standing rigidly around Derrick. The manager straightened her blazer so quickly it looked like a flinch and plastered on a smile that cracked before it fully formed. "Executives, thank goodness you are here," she began, her voice trembling under the weight of its own performance. "We have had a situation with this individual, and I was just about to call upper security. He attempted to enter the acquisition meeting without authorization, and one of the executives, a tall man with silver at his temples and eyes that missed nothing, cut her off with a single raised hand. His name was Andrew Collins, and he held the authority of someone who had lived through enough corporate crises to know exactly where the real problem was standing. He turned directly to Derrick. "Mr. Miles," he said, voice steady and reverent. "We received your Protocol 9 notification. The board is on standby. Are you all right?" A collective gasp rippled across the floor. The intern's eyes widened, the guard's shoulders sagged, the analyst's face drained like ink washing from paper. The manager's knees nearly buckled. Derrick nodded once, composed as ever. "I am fine," he said, but I was stopped. Collins' gaze hardened as he turned toward the manager. "Stop," she swallowed. So sharply it was audible. "Sir, this has all been a misunderstanding. If I had known he was a high-level figure, I would have." "You would have what?" Collins asked. "Changed your behavior? Adjusted your tone?" The manager stammered. "I am simply enforcing protocol." "Protocol requires verification," Collins replied. "Not profiling." Her face paled, the accusation landing with surgical precision. Derrick watched her, not triumphantly, but with the weight of someone who had carried this battle too many times before. Another executive, a woman with a tablet in her hand, stepped forward. "We have been reviewing the corridor feed," she said. Mr. Miles did not raise his voice. He did not behave aggressively. He asked for verification and was ignored. He identified himself and was dismissed. "Yet you escalated multiple times without cause." The intern looked away, unable to watch the manager's unraveling. The manager's voice cracked. "I did not know who he was." The executive's response was immediate. "That is exactly the problem." Derrick's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it quickly, then lowered it without reacting. Another message from Alex. Another update. The system was watching everything now. Collins turned back to Derrick. "Would you like to proceed to the meeting room? We can begin whenever you are ready. The board members are logged in, and our acquisition team is waiting on your directive." For the first time, the entire floor understood what Derrick truly controlled. The deal. The future of the company. Their jobs. The manager's lips quivered. "Sir, please. I made a mistake. A terrible one. I am asking for your understanding." Derrick regarded her, silent for several long seconds. His eyes did not show anger. Only clarity. "You did not make a mistake," he said quietly. "You made a choice." The words hit harder than any raised voice. The guard lowered his head in shame. The analyst stepped back as if the truth itself had weight, and the intern blinked through the sting of unshed tears because she had witnessed every second of it up close. The manager reached for one more lifeline. "Please. I have been with this company for 9 years. I have given everything to it." "But not to everyone in it," Derrick replied. The hallway held its breath. Collins exhaled, then spoke with the finality of a verdict. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of duty pending full investigation by our ethics and compliance board." The manager's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. Security from upstairs was already approaching. Their badges carried an authority the guard downstairs had not. The analyst tried to slip away, but the female executive stepped into his path. "Stay," she said. "We will need your statement as well." Derrick turned slightly and looked at the intern. She flinched, startled to be acknowledged, but he offered her a small nod. "Thank you," he said, "for speaking when others stayed silent." Her voice wavered. "You deserved better, sir." "Everyone does," Derrick replied. He shifted his gaze to the executives. "Let us begin the meeting." Collins opened the door to the conference room with urgency and respect. The floor parted for Derrick, creating a clear path that no one dared obstruct this time. And as he stepped inside, leaving the stunned hallway behind, one thing became unmistakably clear. This was no longer a story about a misunderstanding. It was a reckoning, and it had only just begun. The conference room door closed with a soft thud behind Derrick, sealing the chaos of the hallway on the other side. Inside, the atmosphere was vastly different. The air was cool and still, the table polished to a mirror sheen, and a half-dozen executives stood waiting like a jury that suddenly realized the defendant was actually the judge. Screens along the walls glowed with charts, financial models, and projections tied directly to the $300 million acquisition. Yet none of that data mattered more than the man who had just walked in. Derrick took a seat at the head of the table, not because he demanded it, but because everyone else instinctively stepped aside. Andrew Collins stood to his left, the female executive to his right, while the others settled into chairs with a quiet tension that hummed below the surface. The moment Derrick placed his phone on the table, it buzzed again. Alex's voice came through in a calm whisper only he could hear. "Mr. Miles, confirmation has been completed. The board has logged every action and every phrase spoken in the corridor. Full documentation is stored. Protocol 9 remains active." Derrick gave a muted "understood," then tapped the call off. He leaned back slightly, gathering himself in the quiet. He was not shaken. He was not emotional. But he felt the shift. Every time this happened, every time someone tried to bar him from a room he had earned the right to enter, it carved a deeper truth into him. Today, however, the consequences would not be contained to one hallway. Collins cleared his throat. "Before we begin the formal presentation, Mr. Miles, I want to express our deepest regret for what happened outside. It does not reflect our company, nor the values we claim to uphold." Derrick glanced at him. Values are not reflected by claims. They are reflected by behavior. A few executives shifted in their seats, stung by the accuracy of the statement. The female executive, whose nameplate read Karen Holt, opened a portfolio. "Mr. Miles, as lead negotiator and controlling authority on this acquisition, you have full discretion over how this incident is addressed. We have prepared an initial assessment if you would like to review it." Derrick shook his head. "Not yet. There is a meeting to run." His voice was grounded, steady, an anchor in the room. Collins nodded and signaled to the assistant at the far corner. The lights dimmed slightly, and the first slide of the acquisition appeared on the center screen. Miles Capital has proposed a full investment of $300 million in exchange for strategic reform, restructuring, and technology modernization. The deal positions us to stabilize financial turbulence from the past 5 fiscal cycles, and Derrick raised a hand. Collins stopped mid-sentence. The room stilled. "Before we discuss numbers," Derrick said calmly, "we are going to discuss culture." The executive team exchanged uncertain looks. "A company does not collapse because of spreadsheets," Derrick continued. "It collapses because of blind spots, bias, shortcuts, silence. Everything I saw in the hallway is an operational symptom. It does not start at the front desk. It starts at the top." The weight of his words fell heavily. The executives did not argue. They could not. The evidence had already been recorded. Karen Holt nodded solemnly. "You are correct, Mr. Miles. Our compliance team has flagged patterns before, but not at this scale." "Then the acquisition," Derrick said, "will proceed only if reform is written into the contract. Non-negotiable." The executives straightened, sensing both the ultimatum and the opportunity. Collins leaned forward. "What type of reform are you proposing?" "Transparency," Derrick said plainly. "Accountability. A restructuring of talent management. A complete overhaul of training, as well as oversight of internal complaints. And most importantly, a cultural reset that does not punish the people who speak up." The intern's trembling voice flashed back into his mind. He was on the list. She had spoken the truth despite the risk. People like her were the difference between a company that survived and one that collapsed. Derrick continued. "If Miles Capital invests $300 million, then I intend for this company to reflect the values it claims to protect." Karen exhaled in relief. "I agree, personally and professionally." Collins nodded. "We can draft the addendum immediately." The executives began writing notes, highlighting clauses, adjusting timelines. But the room gradually shifted from a space filled with embarrassment to one filled with resolve. Derrick allowed a moment of silence before he spoke again. "There is one more thing." Every head lifted. The manager outside, he said, and the individuals who escalated the situation without cause. What happens to them? Karen Holt checked her tablet. They are suspended pending investigation. Human Resources and Ethics will interview witnesses and review camera footage. Once the board reviews the findings, appropriate action will be taken. Given the severity of the incident, dismissal is likely. Derrick nodded slowly. Ensure the intern is protected. She did the right thing. We will, Karen said. Her courage will not be ignored. Derrick folded his hands on the table. Good. Then let us begin the acquisition briefing. And with that, the screens brightened again. Charts glowed. Numbers shifted. A new path formed. The meeting resumed, but everything had changed. Because now, the company understood exactly who was sitting at the head of the table. Not just an investor. Not just a negotiator. A man who had walked through a wall of bias without raising his voice and now held the future of the company in his hands. And this time, no one would dare question whether he belonged there. The acquisition briefing pushed forward with precision, but even as charts shifted across the screens and projections updated in real time, there was an unspoken current running beneath the meeting. Every executive in the room knew that what had happened in the hallway was no longer a sidebar incident. It was now a defining moment that would shape how this company moved forward. Derrick kept his focus on the numbers, the mergers, the restructuring paths. Yet beneath his calm exterior, he carried the echo of the manager's words, the doubt in the analyst's tone, and the tremble in the intern's voice when she finally stood up for the truth. Those echoes did not distract him. They defined him. When the final projection closed and the room brightened once more, Collins folded his hands. Mr. Miles, with these adjustments, we are positioned for a stable recovery within the next 4 fiscal quarters. If you approve, we can advance to the contractual phase. Derrick nodded. I approve in principle, but I want a clear plan for implementation. Culture cannot change on paper alone. It requires accountability and oversight. Karen Holt leaned forward. We can create an internal task force overseen by Miles Capital. You will have full access to employee conduct logs, communications, complaints, and training programs. Nothing will be hidden. Good, Derrick replied. Then let us make sure the reform begins today. His gaze shifted toward the glass wall. Outside, through the frosted transparency, he could see silhouettes gathering. Security, Human Resources, employees murmuring in low voices. The ripple of what had happened in the hallway was spreading fast. Collins cleared his throat. Mr. Miles, before we proceed to signatures, there is an urgent matter. Derrick looked up. Collins glanced toward Karen, and she gave a hesitant nod before addressing him. The board has requested your decision regarding disciplinary actions for those involved in the incident. They want your input before they finalize outcomes. Derrick paused. My decision? Yes, Karen said. Given your authority in the acquisition, and given that this incident directly impacted your access and safety on our premises, your recommendation holds weight. Derrick exhaled quietly. He had been here before, in different rooms, with different faces, always sitting across from people who wanted to manage damage instead of change. I am not here for revenge, Derrick said. I am here for accountability. They are not the same thing. Karen nodded. Understood. What would you like done? Derrick thought for a moment, and the room felt the careful precision of his silence. Every executive watched him, not out of fear, but respect. The manager, Derrick said finally, should be removed from her position. Not simply for what she said to me, but for creating an unsafe environment for anyone who does not fit her personal expectations of belonging. Collins made a note. We will proceed with termination. The analyst, Derrick continued, showed bias, not leadership. He should receive corrective training, be removed from client-facing responsibilities, and be evaluated for retention after review. Karen nodded. Fair. Derrick leaned back slightly. The guard attempted to follow the manager's orders, but hesitated when he realized something was wrong. He should not be punished for obedience, but he should be retrained to question authority when it conflicts with policy. Collins wrote quickly. We can implement that immediately. Derrick was quiet for a moment before adding. And the intern. Protect her. Promote her if she is qualified. She demonstrated integrity under pressure. Karen smiled softly. She did. She will be recognized. The tension in the room eased just slightly, replaced by something steadier. Respect. Relief. A new beginning forming at the edges. Collins stood. We appreciate your guidance, Mr. Miles. The company will be stronger for it. Derrick met his gaze. Make sure of that. Suddenly, the conference room door opened. A senior security chief stepped inside with a respectful nod. Mr. Miles, the hallway has been cleared. The manager has been escorted to human resources for processing. The analyst is waiting for review. The intern has been moved to a protected workspace. Derrick's expression did not change. Thank you. The security chief hesitated, then added, Sir, several employees asked if you would be willing to address them before you leave the floor. They want to hear from you. Derrick considered this. He knew what they wanted. Clarity. Reassurance. Accountability. He rose from his chair. I will speak to them. The executive stood with him as he stepped toward the door. His reflection passed over the glass wall, not in a suit, not in polished shoes, not wearing anything that signaled power in the traditional way. But the room behind him, and the company before him, knew exactly who he was now. And as he opened the door to face the employees waiting outside, the air shifted again, tighter with anticipation, because everyone sensed it. The reveal was coming. The moment Derrick stepped back into the hallway, the atmosphere changed so sharply it felt physical. Conversations halted, heads lifted, and a hush rolled outward as employees realized the man they had dismissed, doubted, or watched in silence was now returning with the executives at his back. The intern stood near the corner, clutching her laptop with both hands, eyes wide and nervous, as if she was still unsure whether standing up for him would cost her everything or save her. The analyst lingered by the wall, pale and rigid, clearly waiting for judgment. And a cluster of employees stood close enough to hear, but far enough to pretend they were simply passing by. Derrick walked forward with calm steps, the same measured stride he had maintained since the confrontation began, but now the floor carried the weight of what everyone knew. He was not just an unexpected visitor, not just a participant in the meeting, but the controlling authority behind the $300 million deal. Collins stepped aside to give him space, making it clear he was not the voice the crowd needed to hear. Derrick looked around the hallway, taking in every anxious face, every averted gaze, every phone held halfway up but not recording. Then he spoke, his voice low but carrying effortlessly through the tension. I want all of you to understand something, he began. Because what happened today is not an isolated moment. It is a pattern. It is a habit. And habits can dismantle a company faster than any financial loss. A ripple of discomfort moved through the employees. Some looked down at their shoes. Others glanced at the manager's empty desk, the space she used to occupy like a gatekeeper. Derrick continued. I walked into this building this morning for a meeting that affects every department on this floor. A meeting that required precision, trust, and professionalism. Instead, I was stopped not because of policy, not because of procedure, but because of assumption. He let the word hang, heavy and sharp. Assumption, he repeated, can be more dangerous than any breach. It blinds people. It narrows their vision. It convinces them that they understand someone before they have asked a single question. The analyst shifted uncomfortably. The guard bowed his head. The intern swallowed hard, still fighting a tremor in her hands. Some of you saw me and made a judgment, Derrick said. Some of you heard me and still dismissed what I said. And some of you, he glanced briefly at the intern, were brave enough to speak the truth when it mattered. She blinked, stunned and embarrassed to be acknowledged in front of the entire floor. He looked back at the group. What happened outside that conference room is exactly why reform is not optional. It is necessary. And it begins today. Quiet gasps spread through the hallway. People who had no idea how bad the incident had been suddenly realized that everything had reached the highest level. Collins stepped forward slightly, making sure the employees understood the weight behind Derrick's words. Effective immediately, Derrick continued. This company will undergo a full review of its conduct, culture, and treatment of employees and clients. Training will not be a suggestion. Accountability will not be optional. Behavior like what happened today will not be excused as confusion, stress, or miscommunication. His tone sharpened. Bias is not miscommunication. Dismissal is not policy. Humiliation is not procedure. No one dared move. No one dared speak. Even the air felt still. Then Derrick pointed gently toward the far end of the hallway, toward the space where the manager had been escorted away minutes earlier. The individual responsible for escalating that situation has been removed pending investigation. Others involved will face corrective actions. This is not retaliation. This is responsibility. The analyst closed his eyes with a painful swallow. But, Derrick added, the tone shifting slightly, this is also an opportunity. A moment to rebuild what should have existed all along. Respect. Fairness. The willingness to listen before assuming. The intern exhaled shakily, relief flooding her face. To those of you who stood silent, Derrick said, ask yourself why. Ask yourself what would have happened today if the outcome were different. Silence can be as damaging as cruelty. A few employees flinched. They knew he was right. Collins folded his arms, nodding. And to those who are willing to do better, Derrick said, understand that change does not start with an apology. It starts with action. His eyes moved across the entire hallway, landing on every person with the same steady intensity. I did not raise my voice today. I did not shout. I did not threaten. I did not need to. Because real power is not volume. It is clarity. The room felt the truth of it settle over them like a weight. Derrick finished with a line that silenced even the whispers in the back of the hallway. You tried to remove me from a meeting I was leading. And now you know the truth. You cannot remove someone from a room they built their way into. The hallway erupted, not in applause, not in cheering, but in a stunned, collective recognition that something fundamental had shifted. Derrick Miles had not just entered the room. He had redefined it. And by the end of this day, every person on that floor would remember exactly where they were standing when it happened. The hallway remained suspended in a fragile quiet after Derrick's final words, as though the entire floor was recalibrating itself around a new center of gravity. Employees exchanged glances filled with a mixture of shame, relief, and awakening. And yet, beneath all of that, something more important was shifting. People were rethinking what power looked like, what leadership sounded like, and what dignity could accomplish without ever needing to shout. Derrick took one last look at the group, then nodded to Collins, who gestured respectfully toward the elevator bank. Mr. Miles, the car is ready for you. The board is reconvening in 30 minutes to finalize the acquisition documents, Collins said. Derrick moved forward with the same quiet authority he had demonstrated all morning. The guard stepped aside immediately, bowing his head as Derrick passed. The analyst pressed his back against the wall, unable to meet Derrick's eyes. The intern stood absolutely still, hoping he would speak to her one last time. And he did. He paused beside her, offering a calm and reassuring nod. You made a choice that mattered today. Do not forget that, he said. Her eyes watered, but she lifted her chin. Thank you, sir. You earned it, Derrick replied. As he walked toward the elevator, his mind drifted for the first time since he entered the building that morning. He remembered being 21, standing in the cold outside a corporate tower after being told he must have entered the wrong door. He remembered being 30 when an investment firm tried to exclude him from his own meeting because the receptionist assumed he was a tech support contractor. And he remembered how many times he had swallowed his frustration, not because he lacked words, but because he knew the world was not ready to hear them then. But now, standing at the center of a company that needed him more than it understood, he felt something different. The world had changed, and today he had helped push it a little further. As the elevator doors opened, Derrick and the executive stepped inside. But the story did not end in the hallway. It traveled upward. When the elevator stopped at the executive level, a quiet alert pinged across the internal system. Human Resources had completed its preliminary review. The manager had been officially suspended. The analyst had been removed from client-facing duties. The guard had been enrolled in advanced training. And the intern's file had been flagged for immediate promotion consideration. Derrick glanced at the notifications without comment, though a soft breath left him, a sign of something deeper than satisfaction, something closer to justice taking root. Collins cleared his throat gently. Mr. Miles, there is one more thing. The board has requested that you join the internal address this afternoon. They want you to speak to the company as a whole once the acquisition is signed. Derrick lifted an eyebrow. Why? Collins answered without hesitation. Because your experience today is not isolated. And because hearing from the man who drove this deal and endured what you did will change this company more than any memo or mandate. Derrick did not respond right away. He walked toward the boardroom with measured steps. taking in the polished floors and glass partitions that reflected back the world he had spent years building his way into. When he entered the room, the board members stood as one, not because he demanded it, but because they understood what he represented, not just capital, but correction, not just power, but clarity. The chairwoman, a woman whose leadership was as steady as her voice, gestured to the head seat. "Mr. Miles, you have the floor." Derrick sat, but his presence filled the entire room. They began signing documents, page after page sealing the $300 million acquisition, each signature shaping the company's future. And when the final contract was placed before him, he picked up the pen and paused. His voice carried through the boardroom. "This investment is not just financial. It is cultural. Let this be the beginning of a company that does not confuse appearance with ability. A company where respect is given without needing to be earned twice. A company where silence does not shield wrongdoing." The board members nodded solemnly. No one argued. No one deflected. Because every person in the room had already seen the footage, heard the system logs, and witnessed the truth of what had unfolded only floors below. Derrick signed the final page. The acquisition was complete. The chairwoman exhaled. "Welcome, Mr. Miles. You have just changed this company." Derrick set the pen down. "No," he said quietly. "We all will." Later that afternoon, when he stepped out to address the full company, the employees saw not just an investor or a CEO, but a man who had been pushed to the margins and refused to disappear. A man who carried dignity into rooms designed to deny him entry. A man who proved, without ever raising his voice, that the strongest power in the world is the power grounded in truth. He looked over the crowd and spoke the final words of the day with a calm that resonated deeper than any shout. "I did not come here to demand respect. I came here to raise the standard. And today, we begin again." And the room, once filled with doubt, now stood in united silence, knowing they had witnessed not just a corporate acquisition, but a turning point. A man who had been stopped at the door now stood at the helm, and no one would ever question where he belonged again.